The attack of these two women by their driver has placed the focus once more on the dangers that women face in South Africa. Gender-based violence in South Africa continues to put women in danger, and we want to talk about it with activist Lebogang Ramafoko. Lebogang, good morning to you, and thanks again for your time and for your generosity in joining us. I'm sure you would have seen the story of these girls. It had gone viral, created a lot of discussion in society. A lot of people saying, you know, we've heard this, it's happened to us. Many people stepping forward and sharing similar sorts of experiences where they felt vulnerable and were even attacked when using e-hailing and, you know, ride platforms. And these two girls, their experience as well, just bringing to the fore just how vulnerable women are in situations like this. What did you think after you heard their story?
Unfortunately, thank you first and foremost for having me. Unfortunately, the Department of Transport has failed dismally to make public transport accessible, affordable. And so a number of us have relied on these e-hailing services. But they also operate in a context where there is no enforcement by any third party. So the enforcement that we are talking about, even in the reporting of how Bolt is reacting, is that they are self-reporting. So they are self-regulating and self-reporting. There is no other place that checks, for an example, if an e-hailing service or any public transport service says our vehicles are safe, because you could also be in a motor vehicle accident, and we have seen with minibus taxis, or our drivers are safe, as the various e-hailing services that are on the market is. And I think that needs to be corrected. There has to be a way. And if we focus on e-hailing services, there has to be a service level agreement and a monitoring outside of these e-hailing services that checks the facts that they are having or that they are telling us. There has to be constant checks. There has to be a safety standard that is being adhered to, that these e-hailing services do not fall below. So if, for an example, in a month or, in a week, you've got so many incidents that are reported to an independent body and not only the e-hailing service, then you should stand the chance to lose, your business. If we look at other modes of transport, I'm sure if we had flights where people are in danger, if we had flights that collided, their licenses would be revoked. But we are not seeing this in public transport, in e-hailing, where the majority of South Africans rely, on transportation for work, for entertainment, for travel, for accessing healthcare. And that is a violation of basic human rights, not only for women, but for people generally.
Here's the concern, Lebogang, and you're raising it again around oversight of how these e-hailing platforms do their work, accountability as to whether there is an industry oversight, independent oversight body that is directly, that they are directly responsible and accountable to, where there could be things like the revocation of licenses and so on. I mean, I'm just thinking about what happened very recently. The Gender Commission said that it was concerned about some of the GBV cases arising from these sorts of incidents. And there was that assault and conviction, there was that sentencing and conviction of another Bolt driver in the Johannesburg High Court, 2 life terms, 60 years imprisonment for the rape and kidnapping of female customers. That was, about a month or so ago. And now we have, again, an incident of this kind. So it doesn't matter, it seems, how serious the incidents are. The practice of companies and commercial entities doesn't seem to be changing. All we heard from Bolt was that they have blocked the driver and they are now investigating that driver appearing in the Cape Town Magistrates Court this morning. What else can we do?
Iman, that's exactly the problem. The problem is an e-hailing platform is a tech platform whose aim is to make a lot of money. And if our own government does not understand that, and does not understand that the safety of South Africans is their responsibility, we will be fooling ourselves if there is no legislation that is going to make sure that in order to do business in South Africa, and to offer the kind of business that you have, there are some stringent rules that you must adhere to. So I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that a Bolt will make it as a singular incident in a country that is patriarchal, in a country that has the largest number of gender-based violence cases that are even sometimes more than countries that are at war. And you then act as if by dealing with one individual case by case, you are dealing with the problem. The only way you are going to make, whether it's Bolt or any other e-hailing service, is to make sure that even the responsibility of or the conditions of operating in a country like South Africa are very stringent. That you cannot, by now, we should be having a government that is calling Bolt and that is putting legislation in place that says, if in a month you've got 10% cases, we will hold your license until you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But what have we seen in South Africa? The Department of Transport has been held hostage by operators across the board. It's not a new thing. So in my view and in my analysis, I don't want to look at things as singular incident, and what civil society and NGOs do is to have this outcry. It will die down. And we will not know what happens to this case because we know that these cases take time. It will be on these women to keep on going to court. It will be Bolt giving us some sob story somewhere, and they won't change. Why won't they change? Because their business license will stay. Because we don't have a transport department that has a handle on safety and on regulations that will make people safe, whether to accidents or to incidents of violence like we are talking about.
And I think what you're saying is really important around what's actually going to shift the needle on accountability and make sure that in a context of high gender-based violence cases such as ours, there are different layers and levels of protection, particularly when it comes to platform-related services. And also the fatigue of making sure, because typically with interviews like this, we'd say, so what should women do, before they book a service or whatever? The burden is always placed inadvertently or, always on the victims or on the survivors, rather than making sure that we create some kind of institutional change. I know that in previous cases, for example, even the Gender Commission was acknowledging that Bolt played, a role in those investigations, assisted police, and in this case, it certainly seems to be the same thing. But something deeper needs to happen. And again, as I've just said, the onus cannot be on those who survive these attacks to do something about it. So what do you suggest we do next? We can certainly, talk to the Transport Ministry and we can create a platform for accountability, or at least some feedback on how this doesn't happen ever again. What else would you like to see happening?
Well, I wish there were other solutions that were there. That did not mean that when you are a woman or even a driver, in some instances, the violence has been against drivers. You need to really then adhere to, almost double check, send your location to friends and do this and do that. And I think you are right that that kind of behavior lets them out. For me, if, for an example, the Department of Transport could say, until we are sure that Bolt is taking all the necessary measures to make sure, even if it was to re-register their drivers, to redo criminal checks, we are not going to allow them to operate. That would send a warning signal, because we don't know who is driving these vehicles. We don't know what training they have. We don't know what random checks are being done. We don't know a lot about the things that, for some parents, sometimes they even put their own children, including girl children, into these modes of transport because there are no alternatives. We cannot be stuck at being reactive when we've got a country and we are governing and we are making laws and we are saying we are in a democracy. I'm sure there are technologies, for an example, with the rise of AI right now that can monitor. There are other, for an example, in other countries, the very same e-hailing services will have a camera that will monitor what happens in the back seat. There are so many technological interventions we almost need to pause and say, what are we not getting right, and what tools can we have, from legislation to technology? There has to be tools. I mean, there has to be tools where, for the protection of everyone, there could be a camera that is in the car that at least monitors. There has to be technological tools we can use. But until we are sure that the number of bold cases that are out there, some reported, some unreported, mainly unreported, that you see on social media, says that something needs to be done with Bolt. The only people that can do it is government.
Thank you so much, Lebogang. Not only Bolt, but some of the other e-hailing platforms as well. Accountability is what's needed here, and real accountability, as you're hearing from Lebogang Ramafoko, a GBV activist. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Much appreciated.